Items in Path of Exile and Last Epoch have a similarity in that there's an implicit, which makes an item what it is, and then there's prefixes and suffixes, which modify the item. All kind of items in Path of Exile and Last Epoch can apply different prefixes and affixes for high customization. There are 5 ways to craft in Path of Exile. One is just to use items. You can use random items, which are orbs. They randomize based on what they do. I do have a reference here for the different orbs and what they do in Path of Exile. You can also use essences, which have a little bit more customization because they have a fixed determined outcome. You can also use fossils. Fossils have an opportunity to give you more control because, for example, more cold, less fire modifiers, you put them into an incubator and then apply it to the item, gives you higher customization over the outcome. Besides item crafting, there's also using the crafting bench. Crafting bench recipes are found all throughout this game. Crafting bench recipes allow full customization over what you want, but again, you're limited to only one. You're limited to whether you want to add the prefix or the suffix to that item. June also allows for unveiled items, which expands the crafting recipes. Another way to craft in Path of Exile is beastcrafting. You sacrifice to the blood altar in the menagerie. Allows for very specific outcomes. And the last way is by using harvest crafting, it's called, where you find a garden grove, and it allows for highly unique and special crafts which are not found elsewhere in the game. Last Epoch's a little bit different. You have a crafting bench where you have affix shards you collect throughout the game, which apply prefixes or suffixes, but stacking affix shards stacks the tier of the roll, which allows for further upgrade to that particular thing. For example, adding 2 affix shards, which are dodge, allows a tier 2 dodge, which has higher numeric values. Each time an affix shard or craft is applied to an item in Last Epoch, there is what's called instability added to the item. The higher the instability that's added for each craft, the higher the likelihood that an item will fracture. A fractured item prevents it from being further crafted. There's 3 main versions of fracturing. There's the minor fracture, which just means it can no longer be upgraded as if it were corrupted in Path of Exile. There's a destructive fracture, which is the worst, which destroys the item entirely. And then there's sort of a middle tier fracture, which does not destroy the item, but it lowers the tiers of the affixes on the item, worsening it. Crafting can be influenced by using glyphs and runes. Glyphs essentially protect an item. One lowers the amount of instability added for that particular craft, and one lowers the penalty on a fracture. In other words, if the item would have fractured, it lowers it by 1 stage. So if it was a minor fracture, it won't fracture at all. If it was a destructive fracture, it would become the mid-tier fracture, and so on. Lowers the penalty on the fractures. Furthermore, there's runes. Runes can have effects similar to orbs in Path of Exile, or there's one unique rune called a Shattering Rune, which allows you to totally destroy your item, but collect its affixes as affix shards. So for example, if you have a pair of boots that have movement speed, and you want to get that as a craft, you can use a rune as Shattering, and then apply that furthermore to a separate pair of boots. One more time, here's references to the orbs in Path of Exile, and the runes and glyphs in Last Epoch as a reference.